Hello everyone and welcome back to another video here on Planet Zoo in the Katahdin Zoo. Just a little bit of an update. We end up removing the bridge in our previous habitat that we just made of the American bison and the pronghorn antelope. But on to bigger news, we are able to construct another habitat. And this one's going to be for our ring-tailed lemurs. Now I'm really happy about this. And I did a few different things in here that I was testing out for the first time. So you'll see me go back and forth between multiple things many times. Now I do make this little plaza over here on the right hand side, just so you know, that does go away. And we actually take it out because we're going to make our first walk-through habitat. So people can actually come through, walk on a path, and enter the habitat. So I'm not usually someone that likes to make those types of things, but I said, hey, you know what, why not? Let's try it out and see how it works. So we're going to test it out, and I think it's going to work out really well. And I think you guys will like the product in the end. And if not, you are always there in the comment sections to help fix that if necessary. So be sure to do that. Now we make the side entrance here, or sorry, we make the entrance on the side right over here, and then yet I still kind of make a plaza and like remake it like a million times. But what I noticed too is that the gate where the people come through, you can't actually have more wood above it. It just stays at the level it's at. So I had to make sure I'm very careful about that. And I also wanted to make sure that the ring-tailed lemurs couldn't get out. And they couldn't, so that's always a good thing for us. Brought in a path, it's a little bit elevated when it comes into the area. Now, the great thing about this too is, like, unlike Planet Coaster, it was really difficult to use the pathing for, you know, just in the game in Planet Coaster when it involves any sort of slope. So in this game, it's a lot easier, and that's where you see us doing that right there. And of course, we have to make sure our dude comes traveling in, and here he is coming in and bringing our ring-tailed lemur, so we know of all the needs that he has. So we actually bring in 2 ring-tailed lemurs, and I only started off with 1. They were both bought with conservation credits, and the main reason why we only have 2 and they're both male is because the females are very, very expensive. So like the males only costed me around 60, meanwhile the females were costing me around 3,000 credits. So that's why we don't have any females in our habitat, and that's the same for a lot of animals. So I don't know who's out there not letting us like buy them for a cheap price, but not enough people are selling females on the market right now. So therefore I gotta do a lot more basically farming with my animals. Now I try to make a little bit of a habitat with this piece right here, and it doesn't quite end up working out. I end up deleting it, and I actually end up using all climbable pieces to make the little sorry, I meant shelter, not the habitat. I make this little shelter with all these climbable pieces, and it ends up working out really well, actually. So the great thing about this habitat too is, oh yeah, by the way, yeah, the thing is with this habitat is that this is my first habitat using climbable pieces. So there's 2 brand new things in this habitat. Climbable pieces, and the fact that this is a walkthrough habitat for guests. So this is going to be basically a trial and error episode of just trying to figure out if it will work or not. And then we obviously have to figure out where we're going to place everything. Now I had to make sure that my keepers could go around and feed certain enrichment items in certain areas. So I just had to make sure that would work. Therefore, I did make some platforms for feeding, and it didn't work because some of them were a little high, so I had to bring them down lower. I don't know if I did that off camera or not, but I may have. But the climbable pieces were my biggest struggle. Now the thing is too is that they want a lot of climbing pieces, and we actually give them a lot more than what they need. So I think we like at least quadrupled the amount of climbing space that these guys need. The whole idea too is that we do have this path below here, and you will see later that we actually end up doing our own little customization with it. A lot of the time around this park is that we used to use the curbs, and now we're really focusing on doing something a little bit different with them, which I am really excited about. So we actually end up putting our own custom fence around it. And then of course we want to make sure the rest of the exhibit is high enough so our ring-tailed lemurs cannot jump out of it, because that would be really, 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 really bad. and I have to make sure I can put in some trees for them. I don't want to give them too big of trees, but at the same time, I don't want to give them, you know, just all very, very small plants. I want to give them something they can climb on. So I end up putting in a lot of vines and trying to put in a lot of foliage as much as I can for them, because they do live in the tropical jungles of Africa, hence why we're building on the Africa side, because we haven't done it in a while. But I want to make sure that they have a lot of plants for their area. So I mean, like, it's very open spaced, so it makes it a little bit easier for our people to view the animals. Oh yeah, and going back to our exhibit earlier for our habitat, going back to our habitat earlier for our bison and pronghorn antelope, I took out that bridge because, first of all, bad design, two, our animals were getting stressed. And the main reason why I'm bringing this up now is because, one, I forgot about mentioning it, and two, I just realized that my animals may be getting stressed if people are coming through this habitat. So I'm wondering if I'll need to edit our little hard shelter over in the corner of this habitat. So we'll have to test that out, and I probably will have to make another update on the next Planet Zoo video for that, which is kind of a bummer, but it is what it is. Now we end up making a different little design with our fence here. We used the typical Planet Zoo style metal fence, which is basically just plain fence. One thing about this fencing too is that, one, I like it, and two, it doesn't actually line up with the ground perfectly, which actually benefits us later. And I kind of noticed this after a few pieces because it's actually leaning in toward the path. And I didn't intend for it to be this way. I wanted them to all be straight. But to be honest, it kind of brings in a little bit of an imperfection about how our zoo is laid out. So I actually don't mind it. I think it comes out really well, to be honest with you. So I literally spend probably about a good 15 minutes, 20 minutes just doing the fencing, which is very sad. But you know, you just gotta do what you gotta do. So, and for me, I didn't want it to be like all the way in the grass. I didn't want it to be all the way in the path. So I was getting the precise measurements down. Now you can see I kind of throw in the fence a little bit outside of the path and kind of cover it up with the wood in an imperfect way, but I still do it. And I actually have to end up deleting the last piece because otherwise I guess the game senses that the ring-tailed lemurs can escape through that way. And I didn't want to take a risk of one getting out, although I didn't think they would be able to, but I don't know if their animation will have them go through the whole entire fence piece when they're running. So therefore, I ended up deleting the last piece, and we end up just filling it in with a few little wooden posts, which you will see. Like I did say earlier, we don't add a lot of foliage, we don't add a lot of plants in here, so I don't know if this is something that we should be changing in between next video and last, because to be honest, I think it does look great, but it may not have the right plant style to the area, if that makes any sense. So please let me know what you guys think. It would really be helpful. And of course, when it comes to our fencing, when we finish it off, it is a little bit imperfect, so we end up just kind of shrugging it off and just putting some weird wooden posts right there, which I don't think looks too out of the ordinary. It obviously wouldn't really happen in a real zoo, but at the same time, not all zoos are perfect, so I didn't think it was that big of a deal. And I'm usually someone that really wants to make sure every detail is like keen to the eye. So we just pretend like that's not an issue. I had a little bit more climbing too, acting as if it's really needed, but it's not. But I thought it was necessary just for that area, because a lot of the climbing is toward the back. It isn't really toward the front near the guest's viewing glass. But then that's really all we do with the habitat, so we actually end up going outside the habitat, and I'm doing more off camera. I'm not going to show a ton on camera for this because I think it kind of just goes, I just don't want the video to be so long. So we're just going to do like the main part of what I do outside the habitat that involves the habitat, if you know what I mean. So we end up using the same pieces for the climbable pieces, and then we actually end up using some nice little roof pieces, so we have a nice pitched roof. And essentially what this area is for is not so much for shelter, but it's going to be our education board. So we're gonna add a nice education board on here, and I had a little bit of an idea at some point. I just didn't know how I wanted to do it. So I'm very thankful I was able to figure it out this time. Now I kind of make a little bit of a building in this, although it's really not, but it kind of looks like it to a certain extent, just because it's so thick for something so simple. So I end up using these little wooden planks, which just really worked out so perfectly, and I was really happy that worked out. Now it doesn't fill up the whole entire hole, but I mean, like, as it is, if this were built the way it was, there would be open space inside, so therefore you didn't want to completely fill it up. I had 3 TV screens on here. I ended up realizing that one is probably enough, and then we just put a nice little frame in this, and it works out perfectly. I was thinking about using the more modern one, but then I used the wooden one, and I think the whole point of that was to use it more as an advantage for other building pieces around here, because we are a modern zoo, and I wanted to use more of the modern pieces. We've been sticking with the same ones, so therefore it let me kind of expand off of that without making it look like it was misplaced. I obviously make a nice little fence line right outside of our barrier of the habitat, and one thing is that this is a thing that zoos do sometimes. So people won't go up to the glass and touch it. I don't really care because they're not going to touch it, but I didn't know what else to do. Curb paths everywhere all the time won't always work, so we end up just doing what I think is best right here. Now it does show that our ring-tailed lemurs can escape on things that are actually outside the habitat, which didn't make any sense, but you know what, it hasn't happened yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. I was really debating whether or not I should take it away. But other than that, I don't think there's really anything else to go over. So I thank you guys for watching the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. And leave me a suggestion if you have anything to mention. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.